He was gonna go drink, smoke some weed, and he happened to be hanging out the window. He's hanging out the window like he was in a parade.
Tupac.
Yeah, he was.
Tupac's death shocked the world, but the truth about his final moments is even more surprising. At the center of it all is Keefe D, who unknowingly revealed chilling details about what really happened. He didn't know he was being secretly recorded. We've got all the details here, so let's break it down. This is about a man who couldn't keep quiet. It's sad to see someone talk himself into a life sentence, not by accident or anger, but through years of self-incrimination, all for money, fame, and the belief that he was untouchable. This is the story of Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, a former Southside Compton Crips leader who couldn't stop bragging about his part in one of hip-hop's most famous unsolved murders. By doing so, he turned himself from an unknown street figure into the only person ever arrested and charged in connection with the September 7th, 1996 killing of Tupac Shakur. What makes this story more interesting is that Keefe D wasn't caught through normal detective work. There was no big breakthrough, no new evidence, and no witness coming forward. Instead, Keefe D basically got himself arrested through police interviews, media talks, and his own book, creating a trail of confessions that police later used against him almost 30 years after the crime. To understand how this happened, we go back to 2008 to a small interrogation room where LAPD detective Greg Kading was about to hear something shocking. That year, the LAPD formed a special team to solve two of music's biggest murder mysteries, the killings of Tupac Shakur and Christopher the Notorious B.I.G. Wallace. Detective Kading led the case with a simple but smart plan: offer immunity to gang members in exchange for the truth. Enter Keefe D. He was interviewed several times under a proffer agreement, which gave him limited immunity for giving information to the police. But there was one big rule: he couldn't use that information for personal gain and couldn't talk about it publicly. What Keefe D told investigators was explosive. He admitted he was in the white Cadillac from which the shots were fired on the Las Vegas Strip. He said his nephew Orlando "Baby Lane" Anderson was the shooter. He explained in detail how the shooting was revenge for a fight earlier that night at the MGM Grand Casino where Tupac, Suge Knight, and Death Row members had attacked Anderson. But Keefe D went further. He claimed that Sean Diddy Combs had offered a $1 million bounty for the deaths of Tupac and Suge Knight, a claim Diddy has always denied, and that was never proven beyond Keefe D's word. The recordings were detailed and specific. Keefe D described the events with accuracy only someone who was there could know. After the MGM fight, Keefe D. Anderson, Terrence "Bubble Up" Brown, and DeAndre "Freaky" Smith drove around Las Vegas, saw Tupac's BMW at a traffic light near Club 662, and Anderson fired from the back seat. Those 2008 recordings were meant to be protected. The immunity deal said that as long as Keefe D didn't lie, commit crimes, or go public, his statements couldn't be used against him. These tapes are very important because they gave the earliest and most detailed version of Keefe D's role that night. They showed he was in the car, even if he didn't pull the trigger. But things went bad for Keefe D. Between 2008 and 2018, he seemed to forget the rules of his immunity. What came next was a lesson in self-destruction. By 2018, Keefe D wasn't a cautious informant anymore. He acted like he was untouchable. He started telling his story to anyone who would listen, especially those who would pay. In 2018, he appeared in BET's Death Row Chronicles, confirming he was in the Cadillac and involved in the MGM fight that led to the shooting. Then in 2019, he went even further, giving long, detailed interviews to DJ Vlad on Vlad TV explaining exactly how they got the gun and chased Tupac that.
Let's talk about what happens next. Based on what the book says, Zip gave you guys a Glock, and you guys tossed it in the back seat. And Bubble Up was the driver, and Baby Lane and Freaky were in the back seat. So you guys are driving around, and then you hear these girls say, "Tupac, Tupac."
No, we coming up, what's the name? What's that, Flamingo? Yeah, I think that's Flamingo. We was coming up Flamingo and got to the light. He was gonna go drink and smoke some weed, and he happened to be hanging out the window. He's hanging out the window like he was in a parade.
Tupac. And you didn't say nothing.
I didn't say nothing. Yeah, you're right.
There's also, you go into the book, that apparently there was supposed to be $1 million that Zip was supposed to bring back, but he ended up keeping the money and buying a nightclub with it.
That's what the FBI said.
The FBI said that.
Yeah.
You guys never got any money
Never.
for anything.
Nothing. Not even a pair of Sean John drawers.
These Vlad TV interviews, Keefe D spoke openly, seeming proud, even presenting himself as a street figure who played a big role in hip-hop history. He looked relaxed and confident, clearly believing that his 2008 immunity deal would protect him from any trouble over his public confessions. Then came his 2019 memoir, Compton Street Legend, co-written with Mike Harkness. The book told the story of Keefe D's life as a Crips leader and drug dealer, with a full chapter about Tupac's murder. It was sold for profit, heavily promoted, and presented Keefe D as an insider with exclusive knowledge of one of hip-hop's biggest mysteries. Prosecutors later used this as evidence that Keefe D was making money from his involvement in a murder, which broke the terms of his proffer agreement. Unlike the 2008 recordings, these public statements were voluntary and clearly made for profit. Keefe D seemed encouraged by time passing and by the fact that Anderson, the supposed shooter, was dead and couldn't confirm or deny his story. For years, it looked like Keefe D had gotten away with it. He had admitted to being involved in one of America's most famous murders, made money through interviews and book sales, and still walked free in Las Vegas. But prosecutors were paying attention. They were listening and quietly building their case. Their legal argument was simple. By sharing his story publicly through interviews and a book, Keefe D had given up his immunity protections. The proffer agreement clearly banned him from using that information for personal gain. Every interview, book sale, and documentary appearance broke that deal and made his once protected statements usable in court. On September 29, 2023, nearly 27 years after Tupac's death, Las Vegas police arrested Keefe D at his home. He was charged with murder with a deadly weapon, conspiracy to commit murder, and aiding and abetting. The indictment in Clark County named him as the shot caller, the person who planned the attack and ordered his nephew to shoot. No one else was charged because there was no one left to charge. Orlando Anderson was killed in 1998. Terrence Bubble Up Brown died in 2015, and DeAndre Freaky Smith had also passed away. Keefe D was the last man standing, the only living person who could be held responsible for what happened on that Las Vegas strip 27 years earlier. As Keefe D sat in jail, the case around him grew more complicated.
61? Whatever plea deal he takes is going to be life in prison. And the trial's now delayed to February 2026.
Damn.
So he's going to be in jail for at least another year. No bond.
Didn't he get a bond?
Nope.
No, they ain't never give him no bond.
No bond.
The evidence against him was overwhelming, made up of his own words repeated again and again on different platforms for more than 10 years.
No
Think
bond.
he gonna beat this?
He may. He may. I mean, the only problem is the star witness is him. He's his own star witness against himself because of the book, because of all the interviews.
His defense team's strategy was to argue that he had been lying the entire time, inventing stories just to gain money and fame.
Oh, shit.
I mean, look, what he could say is he had
doing
nothing.
this shit to sell a book.
He said, I had nothing to do with it.
I'm doing this shit to stay relevant.
Well, I'm trying to sell book.
I'm trying to stay
Vlad
relevant.
paid me for the 2 interviews, which I did.
But that defense strategy had its own flaws. If Keefe D was truly lying about being involved in Tupac's murder, why did his supposed lies match the verified facts of the case so accurately? In a March 2025 jail interview with ABC News, Keefe D changed his story, claiming that his earlier confessions were made up for money and fame. He said he had been elsewhere in Las Vegas that night with 20 to 30 alibi witnesses, but he gave no names or proof. To really understand why Keefe D's story matters and why some of his claims are impossible, we have to look at what actually happened right after Tupac's death. After Tupac died, his mother, Keefe Shakur, took complete control of what happened next. She wasn't just any grieving mother. She was a former Black Panther and lifelong activist who understood how the media worked. She refused to let her son's death become a spectacle. On September 13, 1996, Tupac died at University Medical Center in Las Vegas after being shot 6 days earlier. Within 24 to 48 hours, his body was cremated. Reports say the cremation happened by September 14th or 15, leaving no open casket viewing or public funeral. This was intentional. Afeni wanted to protect Tupac's image and dignity from being exploited. There were no photos, no opportunities for the media or outsiders to invade that moment. Over a month later, on October 21, 1996, Tupac's ashes were scattered over the Grand Canyon in a private ceremony organized by the Outlaws, his closest friends and collaborators. Only a few people attended, and the event was kept secret until later. There were no cameras, no press, no outsiders, certainly no one connected to the shooting. The day before, on October 20th, a public memorial was held in Brooklyn at the Canarsie Warehouse. It was attended by hundreds of fans, artists, and industry figures like Snoop Dogg and Mary J. Blige, but it wasn't a funeral. There was no body, no casket. Tupac had already been cremated weeks before. The event was heavily secured due to gang tensions after Tupac's murder. It was open to fans but carefully controlled, with Death Row Records overseeing attendees. This makes one thing absolutely clear. It would have been impossible for Keefe D, a Southside Compton Crips leader, to attend. Death Row was deeply tied to the Bloods, and Keefe D's faction was a rival gang that had literally fought Tupac's crew hours before the shooting. If he had shown up at that memorial, everyone would have recognized him instantly, and violence would have been unavoidable. Keefe Shakur and Death Row staff made sure only trusted individuals were part of the cremation or memorial. Security and police ensured there were no uninvited guests. The ashes ceremony was even more private, just family and Outlaws members in a remote location. The timeline makes everything clear. Tupac died on September 13th, was cremated by September 15th, had a memorial in Brooklyn on October 20th, and had his ashes scattered on October 21st. At no point was there a body, a funeral, or a chance for someone like Keefe D to attend.